Good morning, folks. Well, we are camped right off the highway right now. I met up with Donald with Soft Roading the West and Shy with Out and Back Oregon. And for the next week, we're going to be revisiting the Owyhee country. Now, many of you guys probably remember, if you've been watching the channel for a while, that me and Donald actually did a pretty extensive overland trip through that country last November. And so this trip is going to be basically a continuation of that trip. We started mapping out some routes through the Owyhee that we thought might be interesting for other folks to also want to adventure, but we kind of found a few things that didn't really work out the way that we had hoped. So over the course of the next week, we're going to be checking out some different areas and see if we can work out some of those routing issues and make a couple really cool routes for people to enjoy through the Owyhee. So like I said, we are camped right off the highway right now, but we're also along this river. This is the Malheur River, and it's a nice little stop off for adventurers because there is a nice hot springs that if you're into that, you can enjoy. But it's just a beautiful area, and the river itself kind of holds some little delicacies if you're, a bit of a forager and a fisherman. But last night I spent some time kind of going through the river and catching some crawfish, and then came down here with my fishing pole and was able to catch a really nice smallmouth bass, and that made for an excellent dinner last night. Anxious to get the adventure underway, we took off from the hot springs fairly early and made our way to the very tiny town of Gentura, which would be our starting point. I do want to take a minute and give a little backstory so that folks that are new to the channel have a better understanding of what we're doing and why. A few years back, I developed an overland route that starts you off in Bend, Oregon, and routes you 300 plus miles through some fantastic Oregon desert country and ends you out at the Alvord Desert, a large dry lake bed in southeast Oregon. You can find all the information on that route on my website, www.primal-outdoors.com. Elaborating a bit further on what I already mentioned at the beginning of the video, Donald and I decided last year to extend the route through the Owyhee Canyonlands. Starting you on the Alvord Desert Playa and ending at the Owyhee Reservoir near Vail, Oregon. That was an absolutely stellar trip. We camped in amazing scenic locations, found a desert oasis, rock structures left behind by the bass sheep herders, drove along a large lava flow, and explored an old Jasper mine site and an old ranch that was positioned beautifully along the Owyhee River. I'll put a link to that series down in the description. I highly suggest checking it out if you haven't done so already. In the course of that route, though, we did run into a bit of an issue. All right, guys, well, this was kind of unexpected. I didn't know that there was private property along this route, but we've gone through lots of small little squares of private property, but you were able to drive through them without any issue. To get around that private land, we had to detour out to the highway and then run about a half mile up the road and then jump back onto public land. So our goal with the route we are doing now is to find a better way around that private land. All right, so we're just starting to get aired down a little bit. The road we're starting off on is actually a pretty nice road, but it does have some washboard, making it a little bit uncomfortable. The van I typically run at 60 pounds on the highway, so I drop it down to 40. I know that seems like a lot of air to you guys that are in mid-size rigs, but this is not a mid-size rig, so it, you know, it typically runs on a lot more air. 40 pounds will make it very comfortable, and I'll be able to, you know, enjoy the ride a lot better over the course of the next week, because we probably won't be seeing pavement again this entire time. So for the most of the day, I really feel like it's going to be a fairly easy day driving a fairly well-groomed road. Other than a bit of washboard, I don't think there's going to be any challenges until maybe towards the end of the day. None of us has explored this route before, so we don't really know what to expect. We've only seen what there is to see from Google Earth. Moo cow! Moo cow! Moo! Moo cow! Moo cow! Good cows, good cows, good cows. Come on, moo cow, moo cow, moo cow. All right, there we go, good cows, good cows. Even though this is very remote country with little in the way of services, this is still rangeland. There are folks still working cattle ranches way out here, and you need to keep an eye out for the cattle on the roads as you just saw, but also in our experience, you need to watch out for semi-trucks that are moving those cattle in and out of this country. Well, it's basically what I'm gonna have, but I like your idea of the celery sticks and peanut butter. That's always a fun go-to. I like it. All right, guys, well, we all had a pretty meager breakfast this morning because we wanted to get out on the trail. So we're just stopped here. We're at what looks to be like a cattle pen where they round up the cattle out here. And we're just gonna have a quick breakfast. I'd say we're about halfway down the trail. Like I said, it's about 70 miles we have to travel today. And I think we've gone about half of that. As mentioned before, there are some remote ranches out in this country, but the core of the area is public land administered by the Bureau of Land Management. The BLM gives out grazing rights to the ranchers so they can turn cattle loose on the public land and graze them throughout the spring and summer. It's very common to find a cattle pen like this one on public land. They're used for rounding up the cattle for transport or to round them up to be doctored. But we're back on the road again, and we left that little cattle pen. We're going through, and like, we are really way out here. It's kind of hard to you know, really show you guys just how remote this area is, but there does appear to be somebody has a ranch way out here. I don't know how they, I mean, of course they're doing cattle and stuff, but the road access to this ranch is, you know, not the worst road I've ever been on, but definitely not the best. That my one concern is right now it does look like we're going to go right through that ranch. I'm really hoping that this road has an easement through and we won't have a problem. So that ranch we came up on was the Big Mud Flat Ranch, I'm guessing, because that's what it says on the map. I don't think any of us actually got any footage of it. We were so like busy trying to squirrel around it, figure out how the routing was going to be and if it was okay for us to go through. It did look like everything was fine, that there must be an easement to be able to get through the ranch. There is a couple cattle gates you have to work through. Always make sure that if a cattle gate is closed, you know, open it up, drive through, make sure you close it directly behind you. After we made it past the ranch, we rolled up on the rim of the Owyhee Canyon. This is where things became a bit more interesting. The camera never really does a great job of showing steepness or terrain variations. All right, guys, so this is probably the most exciting part of the whole trip. That last part of the road that we just came down was pretty steep and rutty. Not probably a big deal for Jeeps or mid-sized trucks like the guys behind me, but when you're in a big top-heavy van, it can be a little bit sketchy. I put the van in 4-low and used the gearing to attempt to control the van's speed instead of riding the brakes and overheating them. I will say 9,000 pounds can be a little challenging to keep under control in steep, loose terrain. As we got closer to the bottom, one of the bigger obstacles we faced was washouts. These created deep ditches in the road. This is where a vehicle with a good approach angle and a good exit angle is going to be of value. The van actually shined really well here. It has both a good approach and exit angle. All right guys, well, we've been doing really good with the van. We've gone through a lot of tough situations, but we've got one here that's got me a little bit nerved again, mainly because I'm always worried about the van being off camber. Now the problem is, you can see this road's not very wide. It's just barely wide enough for the van as it is. But down here, which you're probably not seeing at this angle, but down here, there's a rock formation that comes well out in the road. So that means this side of the van's gonna lift way up and make it super off camber, so that's going to be a little sketch. Admittedly, being off camber is the one thing that really stresses me out when I'm off-roading in the van. I just don't know how far I can push it before it would actually tip. This obstacle didn't turn out to be as bad as I thought, but being off camber and right on the edge of that road definitely had me puckering a bit. All right guys, well, as you can see where Donald's walking, this is our road. This is what it eventually becomes. We still got to get well over that direction, and it's too bad because if we could just get around all of this, which is beautiful by the way, we could get into that more open area over there, and I think we'd be able to make the route. But this is barely wide enough for a quad. I can see some quad tracks on it, but I bet that guy was puckering as he went through here because it's narrow for a quad.
I didn't even want to do it on a quad.
Right, so unfortunately, I am kind of glad that at least it wasn't the van necessarily that stopped us from getting around, because not even Donald and Shy's rigs were going to get around this, but still a bummer. So that means my routes, the way that I want it to work, isn't going to necessarily work, so we're going to have to do some rerouting and figuring things out. All right guys, so this is going to be the kind of last little sketchy part of the night, is we got to back up, and as you can see, the van is right on the edge of this hill, so backing up a narrow road is never a good time. I mean, they're doing it. Donald's getting backed up, turned around. Shy's gonna get backed up, turned around. I'm gonna hopefully have no problems. We're just gonna hope. Next time you see me, if the van's not on its side, we had no problems. Just kidding, just kidding. We're safe and sound, no problems. Beer in hand, beautiful camp spot. We got through all the bad sections again, and everything's golden at this point. So, yeah, I tell you what, that was probably some of the scariest stuff that I went through with the van, and I probably will do a lot more recon up front in front of the van, making sure that everything's good before I take it any further on trips like that. But anyways guys, I am going to call it an evening. It was a long day of travel, beautiful country. We came out in here, and like I said, we've got an amazing camp spot, which I'll share with you more in the next video as we continue our adventures here on this trip. Even though that didn't work out, we still have a whole other area that we wanted to check out anyways. So we've still got lots to do. We're still going to be up here for the week. We're still going to be showing you guys lots of cool stuff. So anyway, stay tuned for the next video. Hope you enjoyed this one. I'm gonna leave you guys with some beautiful drone shots of this area, and we'll catch you guys again outside.